The arena was a colossal, rotating prism of light and noise, orbiting a desolate moon that had long since stopped pretending to be relevant. From the outside, it resembled a drunken deity's attempt at a chandelier, half crystalline scaffolding, half gravitational anomaly, all held together by bureaucracy, duct tape, and the collective arrogance of 17 sentient species. Inside, the smell hit first. Not metaphorically. It actually hit, a scented shockwave of ammonia sweat, roasted chitin, synthetic adrenaline gas, and something disturbingly reminiscent of dill pickles and existential dread. The arena's air filtration system had been declared a war crime by 4 minor civilizations, but the crowd loved it. Authenticity. Tiered seating wrapped the interior in concentric, inverted spirals, no 2 seats facing quite the same direction. Gravity shifted subtly every few seconds, ensuring everyone felt just slightly nauseous and, according to the stadium designer, galactically engaged. A thunderous voice boomed across the space. And now, we return to the blood-flecked brilliance of the Galactic Combat Championships. Sponsored by Pol Targan yeast chips, crisp like a shattered vow. The crowd roared, or bellowed, or pulsed telepathically. Species varied. But the effect was unified, deafening approval at maximum volume and minimum sanity. Down in the combat pit, a jagged, multi-tiered circle riddled with spike traps, gravity wells, and the occasional puddle of molten philosophy, a Zalgren lacerator snapped its 12 claws in victory, standing over a twitching Vortal slime pod. The pod attempted a surrender gesture before dissolving into a puddle of its own thoughts. Up in the announcer's booth, a 3-eyed fungal creature wearing a cravat adjusted its mic, and that, dear parasites, was round 42. Let's give a round of prosthetic applause to Clear Chuck the Inefficient, whose sheer mass made surrender both noble and inevitable. Laughter, or at least appreciative rumbling, filled the stadium. The championship wasn't just war, it was entertainment, diplomacy, and old-fashioned species one-upmanship. Galactic civilization had learned, after too many real wars ended in too many obliterated moons, that it was better to funnel aggression into combat sports with legally ambiguous rules and highly flammable ceremonial robes. Today was the semifinals. Today was historic. Because today, humanity was competing. On the mezzanine level, nestled between the booths selling plasma grenades and novelty aphrodisiacs, the betting cube glowed in frantic pulses. Inside, a gelatinous green gambler named Thursdayvac placed another 3 spleens on the current favorite. Not their own spleens, obviously. Thursdayvac wasn't insane. 3 on Tharkle the Spine-Eater to win in under 30 seconds. It oozed. The attendant, a tired-looking ex-diplomat in a bowler hat, nodded grimly and updated the odds. A new projection appeared in midair. Mira Stone, human, 1000:1 odds. The floating digits trembled slightly, as though embarrassed. In a private suite above the chaos, Mira Stone stood in front of a full-length mirror and adjusted her sleeves. Her combat uniform was matte black, designed not to intimidate but to not attract attention. Functional. Understated. The opposite of everything around her. She stared into her own eyes, unblinking. Measured. Statistically, she murmured, I survive 3 rounds if he leads with the primary left arm. 5 if he overcommits the charge. A small chirp behind her. Her diplomatic handler, an overpaid linguist with too much cologne and a terminal case of optimism, poked his head in. Good news, he said, voice trembling with the kind of enthusiasm that usually precedes disaster. You're trending on 14 social platforms. One of them's exclusively pheromone-based. Mira didn't turn. Wonderful. They love the underdog angle. Defiant little death mammal faces impossible odds. Very inspirational. There's even a hashtag. Is there? She said flatly. That's reassuring. He hesitated. You sure you don't want backup? Maybe a drone support unit? I could call in. No, Mira turned. Her voice didn't rise, but it silenced him mid-breath. They wanted a human representative. Not a circus act. No crutches. He nodded, swallowing whatever protest was forming. She walked past him, calm as gravity. The door hissed shut behind her. Back in the arena, the announcer's voice kicked up again. And now, ladies, gentle beings, and non-corporeal associates, we welcome to the ring a first-time competitor, hailing from the obscure spiral arm of a barely charted star cluster. Please adjust your translators, recalibrate your expectations, and welcome the newest species to voluntarily sign a death waiver, humanity. Boos. Laughter. A few gasps of amusement. A sentient fog cloud attempted a sympathetic cheer, which came out as a high-pitched wheeze. And representing this overly emotional, under-armored species, Mira Stone. A spotlight hit her as she stepped into the arena. Myra's boots made no sound. Her shoulders were squared, movements measured. She didn't pose, didn't wave, didn't react to the crowd at all. That unnerved them more than she knew. She looked small. No enhancements. No flashy armor. Just one human. Breathing. Watching. In the stands, a cybernetic bandit leaned over to his friend, a hulking insectoid smuggler. "She's the fighter?" "That's it." The smuggler made a dry clicking noise. "I've seen tougher houseplants." The bandit snorted. "Bet she brought emotional support therapy. Hope it bites." They laughed. They didn't see the slight narrowing of Myra's eyes as she walked past the amplifier pillar. She'd heard them. Not that it mattered. She'd heard worse from her own commanding officers. Across the arena, a massive gate opened with a sound like an angry volcano eating itself. Tharkle the Spine-Eater stepped into the light. He was 20 feet tall, covered in articulated bone plating, and had 4 arms just for ceremonial gestures of dominance. His primary weapon was a serrated multi-blade roughly the size of a hovercar. His secondary weapon was rumored to be passive-aggressive poetry, but no one had lived long enough to confirm. He raised one claw and roared, a guttural bellow that cracked 3 viewing screens and caused one diplomat to evacuate its stomach chamber involuntarily. Mira simply tilted her head. The announcer leaned into the drama. "Oh ho! And there he is. 9-time champion. Consumer of warriors. Critic of interspecies literature. Let's hear it for Tharkle the Spine-Eater." The crowd chanted his name. He responded by flexing a subdermal muscle that shimmered with bioluminescence and weaponized vanity. A silence fell as the referee/biologist floated into the center, projecting rules in 17 languages and one interpretive dance. "This is a sanctioned single-elimination match," the being intoned. "No temporal dislocation. No weaponized planets. Emotional manipulation permitted within ethical parameters. Begin when ready." Tharkle flexed again. Mira stood still. She didn't blink. The silence stretched. And then Tharkle laughed, a sound like a garbage disposal choking on steel. "This is who you send," he growled, voice echoing across dimensions. "A soft-eyed mammal with no claws, no fangs, no spine extraction trophies?" Mira finally spoke. Her voice was quiet. "Come." Not a tremble in it. "I don't collect spines," she said. "I let my opponents keep them. As reminders." The crowd oohed. Tharkle's laugh faltered. In the high booth, the betting holograms shimmered. A single number changed. 1000:1 shifted to 850:1. Someone, somewhere, had placed a small bet on the human. Back in the pit, Mira adjusted her stance. She didn't draw a weapon. She didn't need one. She knew the layout, knew the terrain. She'd memorized the energy fluctuations in the gravity wells, calculated the trajectories of projectiles that hadn't yet been fired. Knew Tharkle's species blinked slower than hers, and that his primary left strike left his thoracic gap exposed for exactly 0.28 seconds. She waited. Tharkle lunged. The world moved. And somewhere, deep in the corridors beneath the arena, where cameras dared not go and announcers did not narrate, something else moved. It padded silently behind Myra's path, unseen, unacknowledged, waiting, an apex, watching its own. Mira Stone had once spent 8 months crawling through the spinal vents of a collapsing orbital prison just to extract one scientist and a half-intact data core. She hadn't spoken more than 27 words in that entire operation, and none of them had been, "help." That was the kind of person she was, silent, meticulous, and about as prone to panic as a neutron star. Now, as the crowd roared around her and her opponent prepared to cleave her in half, she merely exhaled. Measured, slow, controlled. Her pulse didn't rise. Her muscles didn't twitch. Her eyes didn't leave Tharkal's. In another timeline, Mira might have been a career diplomat, perhaps even a charming one. She had the face for it, symmetrical, sharp-boned, the kind that holographic posters loved. But something in her eyes always gave it away, the quiet violence just beneath the surface. People looked at her and forgot their lines. The Galactic Combat Commission had not, technically, requested a human. They had requested a participant from Earth willing to suffer irreparable damage for panspecies entertainment. The Earth government, fractured, mostly bankrupt, and more concerned with keeping Antarctica from melting into Australia, had forwarded her file with something approximating glee. Her full name was Captain Mira Stone, though no one called her that anymore. Officially discharged. Quietly. She didn't correct anyone when they called her the human, or the meat contender, or that warm-blooded accident waiting to happen. She had accepted the offer with a 3-word reply. When and where? The central conflict wasn't personal. It was mathematical. Humanity was still considered a probationary species, allowed access to the galactic market but relegated to minor trade routes and excluded from the nicer parts of interstellar etiquette. The Galactic Compact used phrases like culturally maturing and biologically disadvantaged, but it boiled down to this: humans were weak. Or more precisely, humans hadn't yet proved they weren't. The combat championships were the fastest way to fix that. If Mira won, just once, against a top-tier opponent, Earth would no longer be a punchline at diplomatic dinners. They would be invited to the real tables, not the ones next to the food synthesizers. They'd be acknowledged as equals. No one said that out loud, of course. That would have been too hopeful. Mira didn't bother with hope. Her quarters before the match had been precisely 2 meters by 3, with walls painted the same shade of institutional beige that haunted bureaucracies across galaxies. A cot. A basin. A single light source set to neutral daylight. A camera in the upper corner, hidden and wholly unnecessary. She had spent exactly 13 minutes stretching, 6 minutes reviewing Tharkal's prior matches, and 1 minute staring at a photo folded into a quarter and sealed inside a waterproof pocket. The photo showed a woman smiling under a rust-orange sky. Her arms were wrapped around a small child, perhaps 3 years old. Mira stood next to them, not smiling but not unsmiling either. Her hand was on the child's shoulder, lightly, like she was anchoring herself there. The woman had died in the Kuiper siege. The child had survived. Mira kept the photo as a reminder of both facts. She folded it back, slid it into the seam of her inner suit, and stood. This was not a revenge story. She didn't believe in vengeance. Vengeance was noisy and inefficient. What she believed in was balance. If someone pushed, push back, harder, smarter, quieter. Tharkal had once punched a Trilarian gladiator so hard the impact registered as a minor quake on a nearby moon. He wasn't just the favorite, he was the house's guaranteed payday. The odds on him were so lopsided that the bookmakers were already sipping celebratory beverages shaped like crushed skulls. Mira didn't drink. Not because of discipline. She simply didn't like surrendering control. She had grown up in a domed settlement off Europa's equatorial crevice, where oxygen was a luxury and warmth was sold in 15-minute intervals. Her father had taught her how to skin a frostworm at age 7. Her mother had taught her how to lie with a straight face at age 5. They'd both died before she was 16. She joined the Earth Alliance forces because it offered 3 meals and a roof. She stayed because it taught her how to weaponize silence. She rose through the ranks not because she spoke well or played politics, but because she never made the same mistake twice. Ever. During the Skeld campaign, she survived an ambush by calculating her platoon's likely casualty rate, evacuating those who could be saved, and using herself as a decoy. The Skeld, who respected cruelty over courage, called her the one who returned with fire eyes. Her superior officers called her unorthodox. She received no medal. Later, when asked in a tribunal why she'd made the call, she replied, "Because logic doesn't flinch." And now she was here. In the arena. facing an apex predator with ceremonial murder tattoos and enough mass to qualify as a small vehicle. She cracked her knuckles one at a time, ignoring the gravitational slosh that made her left knee feel like it was arguing with the floor. From the sidelines, various dignitaries observed her like she was part of a nature documentary. A clump of Zarnish negotiators murmured about her posture. A Krill ambassador clicked its mandibles in amusement. A floating egg-shaped diplomat from the Pan-Galactic Cultural Office actually yawned. They'd all read her file. They knew her combat stats: medium height, lean build, no implants, no visible augmentations. Average intelligence. Below average charm. No records of enhanced neural upgrades. A ghost. They thought she was a sacrificial gesture. Mira knew better. She moved like someone used to low gravity. Ankle flexes, knee calibrations, spine always aware of center. Everything about her was deliberate, even the way she blinked. No wasted motion. No wasted words. The only indulgence she allowed herself was a single hair tie, black and elastic, which she looped around her wrist like a bracelet. She'd had it since boot camp. It snapped once during a firefight, tangled in blood and gunpowder. She'd kept it anyway. Tharkle had paused now, watching her from across the ring. There was something curious in his expression. Not doubt, not yet, but something adjacent to it. The first static on a clear frequency. Mira saw it, filed it, let it sit. She'd studied Tharkle's previous matches not for patterns of attack, but for moments of boredom, those fleeting seconds when he believed he'd already won. That's where she lived. In the half-second between pride and pain. The arena's shifting gravity gave a subtle tilt. She adjusted, left heel pivoting by 4 degrees. She noted the sound of a loose bolt in the upper gantry. The smell of ozone and scorched hair. Her fingers flexed once. "Begin," the referee declared, already drifting out of range. She didn't move. Instead, she watched Tharkle do what predators always did, underestimate. He roared. Again. A little louder this time. Posturing. Ritual. He stomped, hard, cracking the arena floor. Dust lifted. Spectators cheered. One overexcited squid being threw a tentacle bouquet. Mira blinked once. He charged. It would have worked on anyone else. His momentum was seismic. Each footfall rang like a death knell. Mira felt the impact through her soles, her spine, her teeth. But she wasn't watching his feet. She was watching his shoulder. Left arm telegraphed. Hip rotation half a second early. Breathing rate increased to 17 pulses per second. Pupils dilated in anticipation, not focus. She didn't dodge. She pivoted. And when his massive blade arm carved through the space she'd been occupying, she slid behind him, not running, just shifting, and touched the exact vertebra where his armor plate disconnected. Not to attack. Not yet. Just to say, "I see you." He spun. She was already gone. Back at neutral distance. His eyes narrowed. Mira exhaled again, slower this time. She could feel the arena recalibrating around them, the audience trying to process what hadn't just happened. He hadn't hit her. And she hadn't hit back. Because this wasn't about brute force. It was about precision, timing, control. And Mira Stone was, above all else, in control. The conflict wasn't personal, but it would be. She saw the fear beginning to form in Tharkle's expression, not because she was stronger, but because she didn't fear him. That was the beginning. And she always finished what she started. The arena's atmosphere was electric, a cacophony of alien voices and flashing lights. The Galactic Combat Commission had spared no expense in orchestrating this grand spectacle. Holographic banners shimmered overhead, displaying odds and statistics in a dozen languages, while the scent of exotic spices and ozone filled the air. The crowd, a diverse assembly of species from across the galaxy, buzzed with anticipation. At the center of it all stood Tharkle, the reigning champion, a towering behemoth of muscle and chitin. His reputation as an apex predator was well earned, his victories numerous and brutal. The betting odds heavily favored him, with bookmakers adjusting figures in real time based on crowd emotions and reactions. Betwizzed. +1. Arab News PK. +1. Opposite him was Mira Stone, the human challenger. Her presence elicited a mix of curiosity and derision from the audience. Humans were often viewed as underdogs in such contests, their physical limitations a source of amusement for many. Yet, Mira's calm demeanor and focused gaze hinted at a deeper resolve. The announcer's voice boomed, introducing the combatants and outlining the rules that subtly disadvantaged humans, favoring species with greater strength or unique abilities. Despite this, Mira remained unfazed, her mind calculating and precise. As the match commenced, Tharkle charged with a roar, his massive form a blur of motion. Mira sidestepped gracefully, her movements efficient and deliberate. She observed, analyzed, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. The crowd's initial jeers began to waver, replaced by murmurs of surprise and intrigue. The betting odds fluctuated accordingly, reflecting the shifting tides of emotion and perception. Betwizzed. In a sudden, fluid motion, Mira exploited a gap in Tharkle's defense, delivering a precise blow that sent him reeling. The arena fell silent, the audience collectively holding its breath. Then, an eruption of cheers and astonishment. The aftermath was a whirlwind of political recalibrations and diplomatic discussions. Mira's victory challenged long-held assumptions about human capabilities, forcing a re-evaluation of interspecies dynamics. She exited the arena quietly, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. The moment the klaxon wailed through the arena, Tharkle moved. Not charged, moved. Fast enough to fracture the air. The sonic boom that followed wasn't dramatic. It was violent, crude. Like a blacksmith slamming a forge shut with their whole body. He didn't waste time on preamble. He swung. Mira ducked. Not dramatically. Not with flair. Just enough. Just in time. Precision born of millisecond math. She felt the blade shear the atmosphere above her skull, heat curling like a sun-kissed breeze across her scalp. A quarter second later and her vertebrae would have been comet dust. She didn't stumble. Instead, she slid low, pivoting under his weight like she'd rehearsed this dance 100 times with ghosts. Her feet caught traction, barely. The arena floor had shifted, gravity flexing from stable to 0.94 and back. A minor interference for most combatants. A quiet trap for humans. But Mira didn't fight the arena. She counted it. Every fluctuation. Every flicker of artificial mass. Her implants weren't visible, not the way other fighters wore theirs like parade armor. Hers were quieter. Older. Illegal, probably. A whisper in her spine, a breath of code behind her retina. Augments that didn't say, "I'm stronger." They said, "I see you coming." Tharkle roared again. This time, less performance, more frustration. He spun, his tail slicing wide, a barbed arc designed to disembowel lesser beings or at least instill existential dread. Mira let the tail pass a centimeter from her midsection, then countered. She didn't punch. She corrected, a calibrated jab into the soft subjoint beneath his left arm. Just enough to irritate the nerve cluster. A warning, not a kill shot. The crowd noticed. The sound changed. Galactic spectators don't gasp the way humans do. Some chirped. Some vibrated. A few launched defensive spores. But collectively, it was the same sentiment. She's still standing. Worse, she's thinking. Tharkle, now halfway into what his species considered a proper blood rage, didn't process shame. Not the way humans did. But he understood hierarchy, and Mira's refusal to crumple beneath his momentum made her a threat to that hierarchy. That he could not permit. He charged again, faster this time, leading with the blade. Not fainting. Committing. Predictable. Mira spun, angled 32 degrees off his vector, planted her foot against a lower arena rib, where the surface tension was anomalously high, and launched herself. Not at his face. Not at the blade. She landed squarely on his back, just below his primary shoulder joint, and drove a thin, ceramic blade into the first separation seam in his armor. No flourish. Just function. Tharkle screamed. Real pain, this time. The announcers, At least the three that operated on sound frequencies struggled to narrate. One fell silent. Another began citing outdated legal codes. The third blurted a long stream of expletives in Kaltari clickspeak that, loosely translated, equated to "the apex has been breached." Mira didn't stay on his back. She launched again, twisting in midair, landing in a controlled crouch 4 meters away. She didn't pose. She didn't gloat. She waited. And Tharkle turned. Something was different now. The blood, black and hissing, was seeping down his arm, but he ignored it. What he focused on was her. For the first time, he saw not a warm-blooded anomaly but an opponent. Worse, an equal. It cracked the veneer of invincibility he wore like bone plate. The arena lights pulsed. Not for drama. For recalibration. They'd expected this fight to end in the first 90 seconds. They hadn't programmed contingency for a human survivor. And now they were improvising. So was Tharkle. He slowed. Not physically, mentally. He stopped lunging and started reading. Mira saw it immediately. The change in foot placement. The hesitation before each breath. He was mirroring her now. Good. It meant he'd made his last mistake. Myra's strategy hadn't been born in this arena. It wasn't built on reflexes or raw strength. It came from years of pattern recognition, watching enemies try to outpace her brain and failing. She'd learned the trick wasn't to be faster. It was to move first. She advanced now, each step a deliberate calculation. Her fists relaxed, open. She didn't need power, she needed leverage. And Tharkle was giving her all of it. His next move came with a sharp pivot, a full body lunge that would have reduced most beings to protein slurry. Mira leaned into it. She didn't dodge. She entered the strike zone, shifted her center of gravity, and let his weight carry them both into a rotational spiral. Tharkle lost balance, not due to clumsiness, but to expectation. He had never been caught mid-leap. He didn't know what to do with failure. Mira did. She locked her right knee against his underplate, twisted his wrist, not the one with the blade, the other, and used his own force to hurl him backward. The crash silenced the crowd. No clicking. No chirping. Not even spore emission. Mira didn't move. Her breath shallow. Her eyes steady. Tharkle lay stunned, limbs splayed, armor cracked in 3 places. His exhale was ragged. His body trembled, not from pain, but from the realization that he could feel pain. And then he laughed. Or something like it. A sound like collapsing starships filtered through gravel. He rose, slowly. This, Mira knew, was the danger zone. Not the brute force, but the evolution. A creature like Tharkle didn't give up. He adapted. And that meant he was about to stop playing the game she'd written and start rewriting his own. So she changed the tempo. Mira sprinted. Not away, toward. Untelegraphed. Unexpected. Her elbow drove hard into his solar plexus, not to hurt, but to distract. In that half-second, she reached behind his neck and pulled free a thin, hairline filament she'd planted earlier. A human innovation. Largely harmless. Unless you were currently regenerating on a cellular level. Tharkle's body seized. Not incapacitated. Just scrambled. A neural hiccup. Enough. Mira followed up with a low sweep, forcing his mass downward. She vaulted onto his back again, this time aiming for the base of his skull, where organic matter met cybernetic enhancement. She struck once. Twice. The third hit was silent. Tharkle collapsed. Dead silence. No one moved. Even the gravity seemed to pause, as if the arena itself was stunned. And then came the sound, a ripple, rising from disbelief to astonishment to full-blown, teeth-gnashing euphoria. It wasn't cheering. It was history erupting. The Galactic feed surged with commentary. Some denounced the result, a technical win, biological cheating, a fluke. Others embraced it, the age of Earth, apex no more, she who calculates. In the VIP box, ambassadors blinked. Some screamed. One detonated from emotional overload. Political channels surged with emergency protocols. Alliances began redrafting in real time. And Mira? She stood over Tharkal's fallen form, not triumphant, but composed. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't speak. She simply turned, walked toward the exit, and paused. Only once. She looked up, just for a moment, to where the human delegation sat. A tattered group of diplomats, defense contractors, and one nervous intern holding a clipboard too large for their hands. She nodded. A small, sharp gesture, like punctuation. Then she vanished into the shadows of the corridor. Behind her, the galaxy reeled. Not because she had won. Because they had all assumed she couldn't.